Hey guys, it's Kevin against Ready for Arrow, Season 3, Episode 16, The Offer, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I mean, the cliffhanger when they went on hiatus was just amazing, because of course, as we know, Ra's al Ghul wanted Oliver to take over the League of Assassins, and I found that to be very interesting, and this whole episode basically just focused on that, which I found to be very interesting, and overall, this was, again, another fantastic episode. This season is just delivering consistently, and it's just getting better and better and better, and I love this episode. So let's just get into this episode because it was amazing, and let's get into it. So we start off with Ra's offering Oliver the job offer of becoming the next Ra's al Ghul and leading the League of Assassins. So Ra's leads Oliver into Nanda Parba's inner chambers where they witness Ra's soldiers train. Now, Ra's then reveals that League members must be ready to kill and die. So, of course, Oliver made that promise that he wouldn't kill anyone. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, so Oliver really has to think, do I really want to kill people? Because, of course, he told himself that he's not going to kill anyone. And I said to you guys before that Oliver's going to break that promise sometime this season. And, of course, if he wants to take the job, he has to break that promise. So later at dinner, Ra's tells Oliver that he recognized his inner struggle to resist killing, and I like that Ra's talked about that. You know, I do like that Ra's told him that, look, I understand that you don't really want to kill anyone, and that you don't feel right about doing that, but there comes a time when you have to do that, and I do understand what Ra's is saying. I mean, even though Oliver doesn't want to kill people, he has to sometimes, do that. Even if he doesn't want to, he has to kill people once in a while. He has to, and he tells him that he recognized his inner struggle to resist killing, and he insists that Oliver join the League, arguing that Starling City will eventually turn on him, which it will. They will eventually turn on the Arrow. Even though Arrow is looked as a good guy right now, eventually he won't be seen as a good guy. He'll be probably just as much of a criminal as, say, like, Batman. That he will be definitely a big criminal to the city. So basically, his partners will betray him, and only with the League insist Ra's will Oliver find true success. And when him saying his partners will betray him, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, we know that Felicity and him, they're already clashing, so I could definitely understand what he's saying there. I think I definitely agree with him there. So back at the Foundry in Starling City, Nyssa doesn't believe Thea when she confesses to killing Sarah. She begs Nyssa to kill her, and Nyssa still doesn't really trust Oliver. She doesn't want anything to do with him, really, and Nyssa's saying that the League's blood debt ends with Malcolm, who drugged Thea into killing Sarah, and then Roy and Laurel burst into the Foundry and subdue Nyssa with a drug, because, of course, they don't really know if they can trust Nyssa right now. They don't know what's really going on with Ra's al Ghul. They don't know about the offer and everything, so they really don't know much of what's going on. So back in Nanda Parba, Ra's al Ghul reveals his Lazarus Pit to Oliver, explaining how its mystical powers have kept him young and vital for years. Now, I knew some point we were going to get into the Lazarus Pit. A lot of people thought that's how Oliver was going to be brought back to life, but of course that's not how he was brought back to life, which I kind of like they introduced it in this episode because they had to introduce it eventually. I mean, it's such a big part of the Arrow universe that they had to eventually introduce it. So he then tells Oliver that it was the pit that healed Oliver's fatal sword wound that Ra's inflicted, and Ra's then, he was healed by the Lazarus Pit, and Ra's makes another offer for Oliver to be the next Ra's al Ghul, and Oliver rejects his offer, and Ra's lets him, and I like that Oliver just, he keeps asking him throughout the episode, do you want to join, and Oliver keeps saying no, and Malcolm and Diggle return home as a gesture of goodwill. And Oliver then returns to Verdant, and he sees Thea there. And when Thea sees Malcolm in tow, she wants him gone. And, of course, she wants nothing to do with Malcolm. Because, of course, Malcolm is the person that made her a killer, and she really wants nothing to do with him. Of course, Oliver insists that he stays until he regains his strength. Because, of course, Malcolm was tortured by Ra's. And now that Oliver is working with Ra's, he thinks that, he needs to be there to regain his strength. So down in the Foundry, Diggle wonders why Ra's would let them all leave so easily, and we go to a flashback to 5 years ago, where Oliver and the son of Tatsuo Mazeo walk through a crowded market. Still separated from Tatsuo Mazeo, the boy says that they must go to a nearby botanical garden where he thinks his parents may be. So back in the present, Oliver lets Nyssa al Ghul free, and when Felicity questions Ra's actions as well, Oliver goes irate and says that all that matters is protecting Starling. And Felicity then goes through the police scanner, finds a robbery in progress, and the robbery is led to this serial killer named Murmur, who is this man with his mouth sewn shut. Yeah, that's really creepy, and I have to say, him as a villain, really creepy, definitely, and I love that. So Oliver, Arrow, Arsenal, and Black Canary foil the robbery as it progresses, but Murmur escapes, and the team recovers a handful of diamonds, which is their only lead. So when Arrow drops Murmur's captured thugs are at the Starling City Police Department, Captain Lance explodes on Oliver, scorning him for not telling about Sarah's death. He is pissed at Oliver for doing this, of course, and Lance just explodes at him. He tells Arrow that he no longer trusts him, calling him a liar and secret keeper, and it's understandable why. I mean, it made him fall out of his chair when he found out that Sarah was dead, and Lance then storms off and declares that their partnership is over. But, of course, the biggest thing here is that he still does not know that Oliver is the Arrow. He still does not know that, and it's just really, really big what's going on there. And just the fact that Lance doesn't know, I find that very interesting. Because, he's even keeping a bigger secret from him. And I feel like if Lance were to find out, he would definitely react in a much bigger way than Thea did. Because Lance definitely is already pissed at Arrow. So this would just make him more pissed at Oliver and want nothing to do with him. And it really would not end well for anyone. So that's really bad that happened. So then we see that the next day, Roy and Felicity are flirting, and I have to say, I love Felicity and Roy together. I definitely do. This episode really sold me as wanting them together, and they're tweaking the atom armor, and the moment is cut short when Oliver arrives, and after noticing the chemistry between Ray and Felicity, he asks to see Felicity in private, and he tells Felicity about Murmur and how Lance has cast him off, and Oliver guilts himself, saying that every word Lance said was true, and everything that he was told about, that was true, and he really does feel bad. So he's really, he really feels like, everything that Lance is saying to him would be, of course, he's upset because Lance doesn't know the bigger secret, that he's the Arrow, and Oliver feels terrible about it. So across town, Laurel visits Thea at her apartment. Laurel tells Thea not to kill Malcolm, but who remains unconscious on her couch, because Thea's very, really does want to kill Malcolm, which is understandable. I mean, he drugged her into killing, of course, he drugged her into killing, Sarah, and she's pissing him for doing that. But Thea says she never wishes she even knew Malcolm was her father. She wishes that was just kept under wraps, and honestly, it probably would have been better for her. First of all, a lot of shit would not have happened if she wouldn't have known that. But of course, that happened, and Thea needs to understand that even though that happened, there's really no way of getting out of that now. Basically, Thea says she never wishes she knew that Malcolm was her father, and when Laurel leaves, Malcolm awakens and reveals that he heard Thea's conversation. And he says that Thea's learned his lessons well, but Thea questions what he really taught her, and he goads Thea into killing him if it will truly make her happy, but she completely resists, she doesn't want to do it, and yeah. So in Nanda Parva, the returned Nyssa asks her father why he left Malcolm Merlin alive, because of course, they were torturing him, and I myself am questioning that, like, why does he want to work with Malcolm Merlin? He says it was a gift in persuading Oliver to accept his offer, and here we actually see what Roz's real plan is, and Nyssa thinks that Roz only let Malcolm live as punishment for Nyssa and Sarah's relationship, because of course, he was completely against the relationship, he thought that they should never have been together, and Nyssa feels like this is her punishment for that. So back in Starling, Team Arrow digs up leads on Murmur. They use the diamonds Arsenal recovered as a lead, and when Arsenal says he'll ask around town to see where the rest of the diamonds may be heading, Roy leaves, and Oliver tells Diggle about Ra's prediction and how Lance Angers and Felicity's romance with Ray are proving it to be true. And he missed to Diggle that he's actually considering Raz's offer, and he's wondering how much he can really achieve in Starling City with the League's resources. And I like that he told him that, because he should try to consider his offer. I mean, it's a good offer overall. It's good for Oliver. It might just be the best thing for him to consider the offer. So he returns to his apartment where he and Thea talk, and Thea says that she no longer recognizes herself, citing her newfound killer instincts and bloodlust for Malcolm. She really doesn't think of herself as Thea. She thinks of herself as this bloodthirsty killer, and she wonders what their mother would think of her, and saying that there's something broken inside of her. Thea then leaves, leaving Oliver and Malcolm alone, and Oliver tells Malcolm about Roz's offer. Malcolm isn't surprised by this news, citing a prophecy that a man who doesn't die by Roz's blade is destined to be his successor, and it looks like Oliver's the only candidate for that job requirement. And this statement leads to Oliver's next flashback, where Oliver and the son wander through the botanical garden, but as soon as they arrive, they're ambushed by Argus agents. So basically that's what ended up happening. They're ambushed by all these Argus agents, and back in the present, Oliver meets Felicity in the Foundry, and she tells Oliver that she knows Oliver is considering Roz's offer, but begs him not to take it, and she kind of tries to steer him in the right direction here. She says that the idea is crazy and tries convincing Oliver that he has accomplished plenty as the Arrow, and says that if Oliver leaves now, he'll undo everything he's ever accomplished, and I do understand what she's trying to say. I mean, really what he wants to do goes against everything he's wanted to. I mean, he has to kill people. I mean, it's much different than being the Arrow. Him being the Arrow is already hard enough. So why give himself more stress and things like that? I mean, he is so stressed over being the Arrow. We know that he has a lot of problems being the Arrow. He always gets upset over him being the Arrow. So why cause more problems for himself? I do understand what she's saying there. But at the same time, it really is Oliver's decision. And it really looks like, she really does not think that he should do it. And she says that if Oliver leaves now, he'll undo everything he's ever accomplished. And I kind of do agree with that. I mean, if he leaves now, all of that stuff he's done the Arrow will be meaningless, because who's going to be the Arrow now? That's what I want to know. If he left as the Arrow, who would be the Arrow? The only person I can think of that could do that is Diggle, because Diggle replaced him when they thought Oliver was dead. So their conversation then interrupted by Diggle and Roy, who have a lead on Murmur, thinking they know Murmur's next location. Oliver and Arrow and Arsenal suit up. So across town, Laurel tries making peace with Lance, and she begs him not to let her rebuild their relationship. But Lance refuses the gesture. He still wants nothing to do with her, and again, it's all understandable why. He says that he may never be able to forgive her for this. I mean, and it's understandable, again. The family squabble quickly becomes small potatoes. However, when Murmur and his men storm the Starling City Police Department, Felicity tells Arrow and Arsenal about the ambush, and the two rush there. And Laurel's almost killed by Murmur's thugs, but Nyssa appears and saves her life, and Murmur almost kills Lance in the other room. And Arrow and Arsenal arrive just in time to save his life, and with Arrow, Arsenal, Nyssa, and Laurel at the scene, the ties of the ambush quickly turn, and all that's left in Murmur, whom Arrow knocks out after a quick skirmish, and Captain Lance then arrives but says that the rescue changes nothing between him and the Arrow, and Arrow essentially says that he no longer cares and leaves the police department. So he's not working with Lance anymore, and he really doesn't care that he's not working with Lance anymore. Which is a pretty big moment, I have to say. Just the fact that he doesn't exactly care is very interesting. So the team returns to the Arrow Cave, where basically Oliver thanks Felicity for her help, but he then admits that Felicity was right and says that he'll continue fighting for Starling City. And as the Arrow, he says he won't give up on his mission and refuses Roz's offer, which I thought was interesting he refused. I thought he was going to take it, but again, Oliver's not going to kill people. He said that, he's not going to do that, and he's not going to let anything make him do that. He's not going to let anything or anyone make him do that, and he's not going to start now. So back in the past, Oliver and the Sun try fleeing the Argus agents, but Oliver stopped dead in his tracks when he runs into Shadow, who seemingly risen from the grave. And in the present, Nyssa and Laurel meet up. They start sharing the memories of Sarah, and Nyssa offers to further Laurel's training. And so now, not only Oliver's going to be helping out, basically Laurel is going to now be properly taught how to be the Black Canary by Nyssa. And Nyssa probably is the best person to do that, because, I mean, she knows Sarah the most. She knows how Sarah was the Black Canary. She was in a relationship with Sarah. I mean, she probably is the best person to help out Laurel. So I really do like this team up. I like seeing those two bond together, and I definitely think it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to be. My only worry is that Nyssa's going to turn Laurel into a killer, which I really hope she doesn't do. But knowing how powerful she is and knowing who her father is, I could definitely see Nyssa possibly turning Laurel into a killer. So across town, Oliver tries telling Mazeo that he won't take Roz's offer. Mazeo warns Oliver that if he doesn't follow the demon's path, dire consequences will follow. And over at Roy's apartment, Thea pays Roy a visit. They kiss, reigniting their romance, and Thea and Roy are now back together. And I can understand why they're back together. I mean, he's helped her out so much, and she really needs, honestly, at this point, she needs Roy. She does. I mean, she needs somebody to turn to who's going to tell her what she should do, and I think Roy is probably the best person to do that, and I'm happy that they're back together because they deserve each other. So I like that Mazeo told Oliver, what's going to happen, and then we see what those dire consequences are, because at the end of this episode, across town, a group of thugs are slain by Ra's al Ghul, who dresses the Arrow. He lets one criminal escape, instructing him to tell everyone about what he just saw, and it looks like he is going to tarnish the Arrow's name by impersonating him and framing him as a vicious murderer, because he's now killing people, and of course, Oliver said he wouldn't do that. And that's basically what he's going to do. He's going to make sure that Oliver takes this deal. And he's going to make sure whatever happens, that those are going to be his dire consequences. So, shit's about to go down, and I personally can't wait. This episode was amazing. I loved it. I'm really loving everything about this season. This season is just constantly delivering, and this episode was no exception. It was another fantastic episode. I think everything in this episode was fantastic. I really love everything that's going on. Oliver needs to take this deal now. He needs to understand that this is a deal that he must take, because if he does not take this deal, those are going to be his dire consequences. Roz is dressing him as the Arrow. He's going to kill people, and Oliver's going to have no idea what's going on. And he's basically going to ruin, Oliver's reputation as the Arrow, which is never a good thing, and is going to end up terribly for Oliver, which is going to be terrible to see. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Laurel and Nyssa bond. I think that's going to be really fun to see, and I like seeing those two work together. Something that I'm probably looking forward to the most is seeing those two bond. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And as far as Felicity and Roy go, I love those two together. I really do. And I like how Roy was with Oliver, how he's, nice to him and everything. I definitely like their bonding as well. My other question is Roz going to be able to convince Oliver to take this deal? Because, he's probably going to convince him a few more times to try to take this deal. I mean, I definitely feel like Roz wants this to happen. He knows that's what should happen, and he's going to do whatever he can to make sure that does happen. So, I hope that he does take the deal, because if he doesn't, then he's going to ruin Oliver's reputation as the Arrow. Lance, I feel really bad for Lance. Honestly, Lance, I kind of feel the most bad for him, because he is completely clueless. First of all, he has no idea that Oliver's Arrow, and he has no idea the bigger secrets that nobody is telling him. And it's really sad, but that's really what's going on there, and I really do feel bad for him. But overall, guys, another solid episode, as usual. I'm loving this season. The season, as I said, is constantly delivering. It's by far the best season of Arrow, and that's basically it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of The Americans. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.